A pleasure to me all at last, and welcome back to Films I Should Have Talked About Years Ago. And today, what we're going to be talking about specifically is a documentary film. Yeah, I mean, has there ever been a time where I've talked about a documentary film of any kind? Not really. Unless you'd be willing to count the very few that I have at least mentioned. And that's because documentary films don't quite hold up in the same way as what we've seen in feature films, but I feel like that this one actually does quite a lot more than just simply showcase a bunch of penguins. Yeah, throughout the 2000s, penguins were sort of part of the craze that was going on, alongside things including zombies, aliens, dinosaurs, and many other things too. March of the Penguins 2005 was pretty much a documentary film that Warner Brothers themselves put together and had the likes of the one and only Morgan Freeman providing narrations on how the lifestyle of a penguin takes place in Antarctica. And this is not, of course, just any movie depicting the life of a penguin, but it's also the rugged, horrifying adventures that a penguin's family must go through. Thousands of penguins basically are down in Antarctica right now. And the thing is that between both the parents that are in charge of their own young, the mothers themselves are tasked with going out and finding food for their newborns. As for the fathers, they themselves are in charge of keeping the penguins warm. The youth are supposed to be kept warm 24/7 to avoid being completely frozen, and they themselves basically have to be as uptight as possible. They could freeze to death or starve to death. Whichever comes first doesn't entirely matter, because the thing is that the male emperor penguins definitely go through so much more than what you would have expected from the females. And so when you really think about it, the story here is just ruthless and terrifying, to say the least. Because the thing about emperor penguins is that while they might be pretty big in population by today's standards, they definitely aren't at an infinite level. No big number of them exists even today, with conservation efforts all around. As time goes by, in the month of March, when winter seems the harshest, when realistically March is actually the time where, seasonally speaking, that's actually when winter is supposed to come to an end. But let's face the fact, this is basically the South Pole, Antarctica. It's pretty much where the coldest known temperatures in the whole world are known to take place, well into the -100s range. And that is about the same level as liquid nitrogen. It is an absolutely cold environment down there. And when you really think about it, it's completely inhospitable even to this day. How none of us go down there and try to make a settlement of any kind is rather simple, to say the least. It's almost the same as when we talk about the equator or the Sahara Desert. It is absolutely harsh to try and make a living out there. In any of those places in the world, we're always going to be in spots between the equator and the poles for very good reasons. The temperature is at the biggest possible case. But anyways, the emperor penguins themselves, there's a lot of facts that are taught about them specifically. There are a lot of facts between the females and males. And then of course, there comes the big time. The time for them to have their youth. There are eggs that they pretty much have to nestle in certain parts of their body, and the fathers are left to be in charge of keeping the eggs warm at any cost. And even with some of the harshest known windstorms to have ever occurred in the Antarctic region of the world, they must keep their youth warm no matter what. And then of course there comes the time where they need to go find food. The females are usually the ones that set off and go down to the ocean. However, from the typical grounds which that the youth are simply born at, is at least 70 miles away from the nearest part of the ocean. In Antarctica, It's a huge continent, but the thing is that in terms of how far the ocean is, it's incredibly far away from these exact grounds. And that's simply because the penguins themselves do need reliable spots where there can't be too much water coming in, or at some points in time where the water could basically become their possible death. As even though the penguins can actually swim, their youth can't really swim that well. They could most likely drown by any means. And also because of how much the ice has formed over the course of winter, because of how much more ice had developed, water frozen solid. Also, because penguins aren't very good at breaking the ice itself in an effort to get to the water line below it, they have to constantly trek around on foot. And if you probably know how fast a penguin can move, they're incredibly slow. Not even a mile per hour they could probably go on foot. So the females basically are all out there trying their hardest to get back to the rest of their families. And when they do manage to find food, a new threat would emerge. An attack from a lion seal. So of course, these seals in particular, of the leopard or lion or other such known species to ever exist, they are a very big threat to penguins, especially the youth. And of course, it even kills some of the penguins themselves. Some of the females that attempt to get freaking food from the water. That is horrifying, to say the least. But it doesn't really stop there, because animal attacks are rather abundant down in Antarctica. Another time comes when the youth are basically maturing, and a bird actually comes in and tries to attack them. It even grabs a hold of one by the neck. Oh my gosh, like, that is scary. Like, I cannot imagine a giant bird coming up from behind me and then all of a sudden grabbing me from around my neck, and then whatever else could happen then. So by this point in time, it's safe to say that March of the Penguins not only gives us a rather terrifying insight, but it also offers a lot to showcase every possible fact about penguins themselves. Emperor penguins themselves are very well known to be down in the Antarctic region, and also the fact that they could survive extremely bitter cold winters and even long periods of time without eating anything at all is just unreal. When has there ever been a time that people have talked about penguins in this matter? Not many. And it's for very obvious reasons. Because the 2000s were a point in time to where penguins were a huge, big success in the film industry. And there are a ton of which to look at. Surf's Up, Happy Feet, The Pebble and the Penguin, which is pretty obscure for a Disney movie. Maybe I could talk about that some other time, but I will pretty much at least go as far to say that March of the Penguins 2005 by Warner Brothers actually does a pretty good job at documenting all the possibilities that a penguin could probably go through before their life cycle comes to an end and another generation of emperor penguins steps up to overtake them. And Morgan Freeman definitely has a lot of serious tones with the way that he narrates every possible event that the penguins have to go through just to meet their own needs. As a family, as a species, as an ecosystem living down in the coldest region of the world. So, my score to such a piece like this from the mid-2000s, 7.5 out of 10.1. Not necessarily enough to compete with the likes of The Suicide Squad 2021, The Bad Guys, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Godzilla Long Live the King, or any other such thing that possibly exists. But at least we can regard each and every possible known penguin movie as just being what they are, movies about penguins. And if you're wondering how they are in more recent years, well, you have Disney Nature Penguins from 2019. I don't know if I get the chance to talk about that, or maybe any other penguin film, but man, there's just a lot of them that have appeared in the 2000s especially. I've even spoken about the Penguins of Madagascar at some point. So, not much to talk about on that part. Or this one, of course. Yet Warner Brothers still has a lot more to offer, so I will be sure to talk about any other stuff that they have as well. But anyways, if you want to see more go down on my channel, then make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.